welcome to another DJ Shan Azure Remix show. I'm joined today by Matt Canty once again. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Shannon. How are you doing?
I am well. How are you?
I'm not too shabby.
Good, good. It's getting to be fall, right? So it's colder out.
It is. It's rainy too.
It's getting darker earlier. It's that time of year.
Yep.
So if you followed our series thus far, you know that we're trying to teach an infrastructure person how to code. And Matt and I dreamed up this when both of us were on the same team. And I had a lot of aha moments trying to figure out how you code things like templated deployments. And template could be ARM templates, or, there's bicep templates now, and then there's Terraform templates. But the idea is the idempotent nature of building out infrastructure. So today, we're going to take a look at how you build out nested template deployments. And you might hear nested template deployments. You might hear linked template deployments. They're basically the same thing. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to flip over to show Matt's screen, and he's going to teach us about how you split up your templates in the event you have some large sort of monolithic template. So Matt?
Yep. So this is the template that Shannon and I have been working on. She has remastered this template a little bit since the last video.
Right.
And so we've got this template here, and we have everything, all in this one place. And depending on what you're doing, we have 166 lines of code in this template, which in actuality is not a whole lot. But we don't want to keep growing and growing and growing on this template and then come in later on and say, okay, where is my VM at in here so that I can, modify that. And then what else do I have to modify as far as variables and parameters and things that are already in here in order to make this change that I want to make. And if it's a change like we're changing our standard for Windows operating system or Linux operating system or something of that nature where you need to make a change, and now you're wondering how this is going to affect the entire template. So and then maybe later on we want to add some things like desired state configuration, and just to have this in more of a easy to read, easy to understand type of scenario, we're going to split this template up and we're going to make nested templates or linked templates within this template. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to split some of this stuff out. Now I'm going to leave this template intact right now as kind of a guide because it has everything in it to have a successful deployment, right? So I'm going to leave this intact, and I'm just going to go ahead and create another template from scratch. So I'm going to do a new file in here, and we're going to call it, let's call this VM template.json, right? And so now we have a blank file, and if I do this nice little arm bang in here and hit tab, it's going to generate our empty template. Okay, so we have this empty template that we can start using. And so I can take everything from this template that has to do with the virtual machine, and I can move it over into this template. And then, once everything is satisfactory here, we can remove it. And then what we'll do is we'll turn this Azure deploy.json template here into our main template that's going to call our little nested templates, right? So we have a VM1, and I might as well just go ahead and do another one for VNet template. And then we'll do the arm bang here. We'll hit tab, and so now we've got our empty templates, and now we can start moving stuff. So one of the things that we'll notice here, and one of the reasons why I like leaving this template intact at first, is because we have some variables and we have some parameters, and the chances are is that those variables and parameters are going to be shared between the two templates, right? Because we're doing things like a VM name is based on some sort of naming convention, and even if you're doing naming conventions on your deployments, yours might be, what's this deployment name, and you might be using that deployment name as part of the virtual network as well as the virtual machines and things like that, right? So you're probably referencing the same variables and parameters in your VM that you are also referencing in your VNet in order to create the naming conventions and things like that. So as far as our VM is concerned, we have our NIC deployment, and here I'm gonna kind of use a cheat resource here, and I'm gonna look at my resources and make sure I'm going, okay, so we have our NIC, and so if I click over here and highlight that NIC, it's going to highlight all of the code that is making up that deployment of the NIC in this template. So
which is always easier than trying to guess, right? So Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio, both tools do this when you click on the resource.
yeah, and if you use good conventions in your spacing and formatting and things like that, it's a little bit easier to tell. And if you do things like, put your cursor by a bracket, you'll notice that there's some little square. Let me zoom in a little bit. All right, I thought there was a nice little zoom feature with like a control scroll, alt scroll, or not.
So I usually use my mouse and I kind of roll. I know there is a keyboard shortcut. I can never remember it myself.
When you say mouse and roll, you mean?
Yeah, like control and roll, I think is what it is, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing here.
Oh, and it's not doing it. Oh, well.
Oh, and I just closed it, trying to click on it really quick.
Once again, we are live, folks. We are live. Even though you're watching this,
Yep,
we are recording this live.
we are. So I'm going to bring that back up real quick.
Maybe it's in the, isn't there a view?
Yeah, I was going to go click here in this little ellipsis and see. Oh, that's cool. I didn't notice that before. I'm going to click on it and see what it does. It says I can get a preview of the ARM file graphically.
Oh, well, that's cool.
And it kind of looks like it's showing me dependencies in here.
Yeah.
Which is really cool as well.
So as your templates get bigger, this might be helpful because maybe you're running into problems. Maybe you're getting a lot of the, I like to call it red text of death. That might be another way to visually say, am I declaring everything correctly?
Yep. So I'm going to try control plus, the keyboard shortcut for that works.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll have to figure out the scroll. All right, so let me come down here and click on my network card again. And then, so you might be able to see that a little bit better, but it kind of outlines the ending tag that goes with the beginning tag that I'm kind of highlighting there. Right. So, so it shows you how they kind of line up or which ones are beginning tags and things like that. Yeah. So, and then you see this line is a little bit darker. So we could try to use that, but I just like clicking and highlighting this way because then fewer clicks. Right, so I'm going to take my NIC deployment, and I'm not going to separate the NIC from the VM because it's a codependency there where you can't create a VM without creating a NIC anyways. And I'm going to drop this in resources over here, and we're going to start to get some underlining and red text and things like that that are telling us, hey, you're specifying a variable here, but hey, there's no variable, right? So that's a good thing. That's why I like the tools that you get. And Visual Studio has similar tools as well that they can help you address the problems with a template that you're creating. And in this way, a lot of times, and I'm gonna make a confession here, is a lot of times I will copy and paste code and drop it into a template and then rearrange it, format it, do whatever I need to do to make it do what I want it to do.
Right.
So it's nice to have these things that are pointing out, hey, you don't have this variable or this parameter in here. So yeah, we'll take care of those here in a little bit. And so I'm going to back here, and I'm going to take my VM as well. Yeah, we'll just copy all that, and we can see that VM goes all the way down, from line 102 to 147. We'll copy that and put that in our VM template as well. I'm going to put a little comma here.
And that's just JSON syntax in terms of him needing that comma there.
Yeah, it's just an ARM syntax. So if we're looking at the ARM, which is a good thing to point out. If we're looking at the ARM here, you'll notice that I can, and ooh, it looks like something is not right. Because notice how it's collapsing.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we look at the ARM, that looks okay. See if this one is okay. Yep, that one's okay. But for whatever reason, it doesn't want to collapse properly. So that's a resource there. I might not be seeing that right, so let's do this. Let's clear all of that out and just put this here. And I don't know why it's formatting it that way. See there, some sort of character line up there wasn't working right. But so now that arrow is in the right spot, right? You want your arrow to be matched up with your curly bracket there.
Yeah.
So now I can collapse those and see, okay, I've got a couple of resources in there, which is, what you want to be able to see.
Yeah.
All right, and it doesn't matter that I don't have the right variables in there because the formatting is correct as far as the commas and all that are in the right spots to make sure that resource lines up properly. Okay, so I've got those, and now I want to, let's see, so that is the VM, that is the NIC. The storage account is being created just for the VM, but we could put that in its own template if we wanted to. And then just pass in the storage account that we want to use. And what was this storage account created for? I don't remember.
So
old school VHD?
Old school VHD. We could actually even go so far as to make it be a managed disk, and that was something I was wondering if we wanted to do. Right? It's up to you if you think it makes sense to just scrap the storage account. We have to redeploy the VM, but it would be good in terms of showcasing how you grab some of that info.
Okay, yeah, let's do that then. Okay, so let's fix up our template real quick, our VM template, get our variables there. VM, same VNet nickname is the variable that we want for the first one, and you just go in here and you figure out what the variables are that you need to keep, and copy them and paste them over in your variables area. So this is one. Not what I want to do. Shift end, and now I'm going to delete it and see what is affected here because you notice I get some red.
You do.
Right? And so this is the main template. And do I need this in the main template? If I'm getting rid of the virtual machine, right, and I'm getting rid of the NIC, and those are the only two places where it looks like there's any red. So we won't even need to keep it over there.
Yeah. So
let's go ahead and put that variable in here. Copy paste. Oh, and it looks like that's referencing a parameter as well. And we've got some. Oh, it's just complaining about the parameter. So we can go over here. We'll grab that parameter. Actually, yes, we need to grab that parameter. Same VNet name. And the reason what we're going to end up doing is we're going to pass the parameters from the main template into the linked template anyways. So whatever parameters that you have for your VM, those are things that you want to modify at runtime, at deployment time anyway, right? So you can take a parameter in your main file and end up passing that through to a sub template that might need that changed at deployment time as well.
Very
so
cool.
Yeah, so your template doesn't have to be really sticky just because it's nested, right? We can pass our parameters through, so it'll be cool.
But that's just parameters, right? Variables need to be in the template, in the nested template, right? Okay.
Correct. If that template is referencing a variable, it has to be in that, that variable has to be within that template. Now, if you wanted to make all your variables a parameter and then just pass them everything through as parameters, you could do that. You could even have a variable in your main template that you pass through as a parameter in a sub template. If that's the way that you want to kind of control the flow orchestration between templates, you could do that.
There is also a parameters template if you want to use that. I don't know.
Doesn't like the comma because that's not the. And I'm going to move this, or maybe I'll move this back. Do you like that view better, or do you like them to be indented? Because we have functions that.
I don't know.
I'd rather have it indented.
Okay. Again, it's always a personal preference, right?
Yeah. So this way, parameters, you got a clear line of these are all the parameters. Okay, so the first one that we've done, now we have our variable and that's happy, and now we have our variable being called here and that's happy because the variable exists, right? So we're just going through here and we're solving some of the problems with the copy paste issues. And okay, so here we have a depends on. And so that's another thing with nested templates that you want to be aware of, is that we have a dependency right now on a resource, and this is saying this resource, because of the way that this resource ID function works, it's saying it's going to look for a resource because we've left out, notice here we're starting with the Microsoft.network, we've left out the subscription ID, and I'm pointing at the screen as if you're gonna see where I'm pointing, but we've left out the subscription ID and the resource group name, which you can provide those to resource ID so that if it's not in the same resource group, you can say this depends on this resource in another resource group, right? But we're not, we actually won't need this, because if we're running our public IP address in a nested template over here, so if we put our public IP address in its own template, which in the case of this one we could, or we don't have to, because it's again attached to the VM, right? So this is just saying right now that our variable doesn't exist, but we didn't copy over our public IP address.
Okay.
So we could do that as well. Is that our public IP address right there? Let's go ahead and copy that. And we're going to go ahead, put our comma there at the end of our resources because we're adding another one. So at the end of your resource array, so that's what this square bracket means. Up with your square bracket for resources right here, it means that this is an array of resources that we're adding, right? So let me just minimize these. So in that array, right, we have this object plus this object plus this object. And notice the two objects at the top, if it has a following object in that same array, we have to put a comma after it, right? But being that this one so far is the last one in the array,
it doesn't
have a comma.
Yeah.
Yep. If we did put a comma, Visual Studio would be upset and it would underline it and say, hey, you don't have another resource. This doesn't need to be here. So the way that JSON formatting works is that commas are expected after every object in the array or object that you're creating those in, right? Because in this object, we have more objects, like we have a properties object here, right? So anything that's in properties, like you have an IP configuration, because it's the only one, you don't have to have a comma. But if we put a comma and then we got a list of these things, we could do some DNS settings in here, but we have to have that comma. Since we don't have anything else, we can forego that comma because it's the last thing in the object.
Very cool.
Yeah, so hopefully that makes sense in the whole comma or no comma kind of debate that you might be going through if you're working on a template.
And I think the idea here too is if you miss one or you have too many, you'll actually see that it's like a little red squiggly line on the right, and you can go down to where it is and you can hover over exactly what's going on. Doesn't matter if it's Visual Studio, doesn't matter if it's Visual Studio Code, both do the same functionality. It's kind of like the linter, the pre-programmed linter, right?
Yep. And so you'll notice there's a bar over here on the right hand side. So if you have this long template that you're editing and you say, oh man, well there's a bunch of red in here, where do I go to find it? And the more that you expand these guys, notice how the red kind of gets farther apart, and then you can go click over here on the red and see that it's somewhere within the screen that you're looking at. So this is basically just complaining about the variable here, right? So I come back down where I put that comma that doesn't need to be there, and then I get rid of it, and that red goes away, and then you don't see it on the right hand side anymore either.
Cool.
Okay, so we have our public IP address in here as well now. Let's go ahead and do, that's why, because we were looking at the pip name. So we've got another variable that we need to copy over. Scroll back up to variables, and it was
VM.
yeah, there's a space in here. Let me get, because I deleted that other one.
Yeah.
It's this
I
one,
didn't
right?
see it originally either. I had to think about it.
I don't want that closing brace. That's the variables closing brace. Let me get that back over there. There we go. That's right. Because notice there's no comma at the end of this one.
Yeah.
So let's make sure we copy that. And let's throw it in our VM template. And he might complain about a parameter or another variable that's not available. Okay, so that solves that red. Another variable, vnet subnet ref.
And that's why we actually did the template using Visual Studio versus Visual Studio Code. There's a great way to link it to an existing virtual network. And that's what we wanted to do in terms of kind of building this out modularly.
Right. And you'll notice too that I'm copying these variables and they're not in any specific kind of order, right? Because there's no need for them. And this variable is actually referencing another variable, because part of your subnet reference is going to be your VNet ID. So we'll come back up here and we'll grab that VNet ID.
And if anybody's been following thus far, I changed some of the naming conventions around because that's what we got into problems with originally when we built this out. So it's ever so slightly different than what it was before, but it's basically the same. And what we'll do with this, once we're kind of done with everything, Matt, we should also probably put some of this in GitHub. That way folks can dig into some of the code.
Sure. So we've got virtual network resource group and virtual network name parameters that are both being called by that. So let's grab those. Virtual network name and resource group. And I'm just going to grab both of those.
Okay.
I'm going to cut the comma off of it. Put a comma there and paste those. The formatting kills me. And I'm sure there are probably some formatter extensions that will say, "Hey, this is not formatted. Do you want to format it?" And then it'll like prettify it. All right, so that fixed up that variable. Notice red there. So now let's go and see what other variables. I'm saying VNet name. So a matter of copying, pasting right now. Again, you can fast forward this. Maybe we'll throw up a flag or some kind of marker to tell you when to stop.
We should, yeah, we should, because yeah, I feel like we could even speed this up, right?
Yes, I bet we could. You can do that kind of magic, right?
Yes.
Sweet. It'll make me look twice as productive. Make sure my manager sees this. Except anywhere where I fail. No, I'm just kidding. I hope he sees me fail. That'll let him know I embrace the growth mindset, right?
Yeah, that's good. Well, we're all encouraged to do that, right?
Oh yeah, and I encourage everyone else to do it as well, because you don't get very far if you try to be perfect the first time. If you're afraid of just, hey, push play and see what happens, right? I do that a lot when I develop, when I'm writing templates. Like there will be many times where I'm like, I know this is going to fail. I just don't know where it's at, right? Because I might have forgotten the dependency or something, and so I'll deploy. I'll go push play and see what error messages pop up. That's why in the last video, I think I said, "Oh, I love troubleshooting," because I mean that's the path to greatness, right?
Yeah.
I'm saying VNet VM size. All right, so I have a question for you.
Sure.
Why are we putting the VNet or the VM size as a variable?
That's what the code did. Remember, I right clicked and I added a resource. We don't have to do that. We could always have this be an opportunity where we sort of
This is,
rewrite on the fly.
I think so. I think this is our opportunity.
Let's do it. Let's bring it up.
Parameters, and we're going to call this, I'm just going to call it VM size. Sweet. And then I was hoping there was a like some sort of extension. If anybody is watching us that has time, an extension would be nice to right click this and say, oh, that parameter doesn't exist, go ahead and create it.
Yeah.
And I thought there was something like that, but maybe it's just to add it to the parameter file. So this is a little bit, it would be nice to have a click and do, but we don't. So we're going to walk through creating a parameter, and let's format this parameter real quick. Put it in the right place. All right, so we got to put a comma. Now I'm pasting, and notice also when I did this, it says, hey, you want to create a new parameter? So I could hit tab, and now I'll just paste that in there, VM size, and it's going to be a string. And so let's just tab through this. String is correct. And description, oh, I should have started typing my description, which nobody's going to see ever because this will be a nested template unless they come in to edit it.
Yeah. It's hard, right? Like, I think putting descriptions in is helpful if you're trying to figure out exactly what you're doing. But yeah, if you become more savvy, eventually you're just not going to care. You can sort of read exactly what's being deployed. You'll sort of understand the architecture, especially now that you've got ways to highlight visually the architecture, right? Inside of Visual Studio Code.
Yep. And I think we had mentioned that this is not a great practice, right?
No, but I was thinking that one of our future posts or one of our future videos could actually incorporate Key Vault.
Yep, and that was going to be my recommendation is we should show them how to use Key Vault, but in this video there's probably not a whole lot of time because we want to make it digestible for you. We will do this in a later video for those of you who struggle with, oh, how do I not keep my secrets in the parameter file?
I mean, I think you eventually just showed me how it was set up, right? So our quick starts do a great job of sort of setting you up, but it's hard to know the exact format. And I think, I was struggling with it when we were on the same team, and you spent literally 5-10 minutes on it, and I was able to kind of rip and run from there on. So I feel like we should definitely talk a little bit about code and storing secrets and maybe even source control.
Yeah, I'm going to make a note here real quick to say Key Vault. We could probably do a video just on Key Vault.
Yeah.
Just because there's some settings that you'll want to make sure you check as far as security to Key Vault goes that says, hey, allow this Key Vault to be used by the template execution engine for deployments, right? Otherwise, the security is not there. You try to add it. You can do everything right with the code, and then all of a sudden you go to deploy and it says you can't do it because your template doesn't have access to Key Vault.
Right. Yeah, I feel like that's going to be a really good one.
Yeah.
I think every administrator knows they need to be secure, but you're also needing to understand how to work in a cloud-based world, and getting to that point sometimes is an overnight sensation, right? You got to think about the care and feeding of getting your skill sets there. So I feel like going through a session on that alone would just be invaluable.
Yes, because there's so many things that you can do as well. Even your developers, you can say, hey, you should put this in your app settings to reference the secret from Key Vault. And there's a way that they can do that using managed identity and things like that to where, you'll have that reference in there. And because that app service or whatever platform as a service offering they're using is referencing that Key Vault as that app identity would have the access to the Key Vault.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and put these parameters in here for now, but stay tuned later on in another video for us to help you fix this problem.